She stood on the edge of the cornfield, watching the sun melt into the horizon. The stalks swayed in the evening breeze, whispering secrets Maggie couldn't quite catch. She'd come here to check on the south fence, but something held her in place now, a feeling she couldn't name. That's when she heard it. A melody, soft and wavering, drifting through the rows of corn like mist. A lullaby, familiar yet distant, the kind her mother used to sing. Maggie turned slowly, scanning the empty field. The sound seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Her eyes settled on the Scarecrow at the far edge, a patchwork figure she'd made years ago from Henry's old flannel shirts and straw from the barn. The melody faded. In the growing darkness, the Scarecrow's head turned toward her. Just slightly. Just enough. Then it bowed, a slow, deliberate movement that sent ice through Maggie's veins. She blinked hard, digging fingernails into her palms. When she looked again, the Scarecrow stood motionless, face blank and faded, arms outstretched as always. Maggie backed away, nearly tripping over the uneven ground. She hurried toward the house, feeling the weight of unseen eyes on her back. The farmhouse stood like a sentinel against the darkening sky, its weathered boards and sagging porch a testament to decades of sun and rain. Maggie climbed the steps, wincing at the familiar creak of the third board. Inside, she moved through rooms filled with ghosts, not the supernatural kind, but memories that lingered in every corner. The kitchen still smelled faintly of her mother's apple pies. The living room held the impression of her father's body in his favorite chair. And everywhere, and everything, was Henry. Maggie poured herself a glass of water, her hands still trembling slightly. At 63, she'd grown accustomed to the solitude of widowhood. 5 years since Henry's heart had stopped while he was mending the chicken coop. 5 years of waking up reaching for someone who wasn't there. She moved to the window, looking out at the cornfield now swallowed by darkness. The farm had been in her family for generations. She'd grown up here, left for college swearing never to return, then came back with Henry when her parents needed help. They'd planned to stay just long enough to get the place back on its feet. Then her parents died, one after the other like falling dominoes, and somehow they never left. Now it was just her, the creaking house, and 18 acres that demanded more work than her aging body could give. The next morning, Maggie convinced herself she'd imagined the whole thing. The lullaby, the Scarecrow, just tricks played by a tired mind and the fading light. She went about her chores, feeding the few chickens she kept, weeding her small vegetable garden, sweeping the endless dust from the porch. That evening, she climbed the narrow stairs to the attic. Henry's birthday was coming up, and she'd taken to marking it by looking through their old things. A ritual of remembrance that hurt and healed in equal measure. The attic air hung thick with dust and memory. Cardboard boxes labeled in her mother's neat hand sat alongside plastic tubs filled with Henry's fishing gear and her own abandoned art supplies. Maggie knelt beside a trunk containing Henry's clothes, running her fingers over the soft flannel shirts she couldn't bear to give away. Beneath them, she found a small wooden box she didn't recognize. Inside lay a yellowed envelope with her name written in Henry's blocky handwriting. The paper crackled as she opened it, revealing a letter dated just days before his death. "My dearest Maggie," it began. "If you're reading this, I've gone and left you alone, which was never my intention. There's something I've kept from you, not out of secrecy, but as a surprise. Remember how we used to talk about traveling? About seeing the ocean together? I've been saving, a little at a time. It's not much, but it's something. I've hidden it in the place where we first danced under the stars, where you said you'd be mine forever. Find it, Max. Use it. Live the life we dreamed of. I love you always, Henry." Maggie pressed the letter to her chest, tears blurring her vision. The cornfield. They danced there the night he proposed, under a full moon, with no music but the cicadas and their beating hearts. She slept fitfully that night, Henry's words echoing in her mind. At dawn, she pulled on her boots and walked to the field, letter clutched in her hand like a talisman. The Scarecrow watched her approach, its button eyes reflecting the morning light. Maggie stood before it, feeling foolish and hopeful all at once. "What did he hide here?" she asked aloud, her voice startling a crow from a nearby stalk. The Scarecrow gave no answer. Maggie began to walk the rows, eyes scanning the ground. They danced near the center of the field, she remembered. Henry had cleared a small circle among the young corn plants. Hours passed. The sun climbed higher, beating down on her uncovered head. Sweat trickled down her back as she dug at promising spots with a small garden trowel. Nothing. As dusk approached, exhaustion and disappointment drove her back to the house. She'd try again tomorrow. That night, the lullaby returned. Maggie woke to it, the gentle melody floating through her open window. Without thinking, she slipped from bed and followed the sound outside, across the yard, to the edge of the cornfield. The Scarecrow stood silhouetted against the star-filled sky. As Maggie approached, it turned its head toward her. This time, she didn't look away or try to convince herself it wasn't happening. "Show me," she whispered. The Scarecrow's arm lifted slowly, pointing deeper into the field. Maggie followed, the cornstalks brushing against her nightgown. The lullaby grew stronger, pulling her forward until she reached a small clearing. Moonlight illuminated a patch of earth that looked recently disturbed. Maggie fell to her knees and began to dig with her bare hands. The soil gave way easily, revealing a small metal box. Inside lay a child's toy, a tiny red tractor, just like the one their son would have played with, had he lived past birth. Beside it was a journal she recognized as Henry's. She opened it with trembling fingers, finding pages filled with his thoughts, dreams, and sketches of places they'd talked about visiting. The Grand Canyon, the Maine coastline, the redwood forests of California. Maggie clutched the journal to her chest, tears flowing freely now. This wasn't about money at all. It was about the dreams they'd set aside, the life they'd planned but never lived. She returned to the field each night that week, drawn by the lullaby. Each time, she uncovered another piece of their shared past, a pressed flower from their wedding, a mixtape he'd made her when they were dating, a series of love letters he'd written but never given her. The line between waking and dreaming blurred. Sometimes Maggie would find herself in the field with no memory of walking there. Other times, she'd hear Henry's voice calling her name from among the corn stalks, only to find nothing but empty air when she searched. The Scarecrow became her silent companion. She found herself talking to it, telling it about her day, about her memories of Henry, about her regrets. "We were going to travel," she told it one evening. "See the world beyond this farm." But there was always something: the crops needed tending, or money was tight, or his mother got sick. We kept putting it off, thinking there'd be time later. The Scarecrow listened, its button eyes reflecting the setting sun. "Then we lost the baby," Maggie continued, her voice catching. "After that, it was like we both went asleep somehow, just going through the motions. I think we were afraid to want anything too badly." As she spoke, the Scarecrow's straw-filled hand moved slightly, as if reaching toward her. Maggie didn't flinch this time. Instead, she reached back, her fingers brushing against the rough burlap. That night, the lullaby led her to the Scarecrow itself. Standing before it in the moonlight, Maggie noticed something she'd missed before: a small seam along its chest, nearly invisible among the patchwork of fabric. Her fingers traced the line, finding a hidden pocket. Inside was a small wooden box, intricately carved with corn stalks and stars. Maggie's breath caught in her throat as she recognized Henry's handiwork. He'd always had a talent for carving, creating small treasures from scraps of wood. She opened the box carefully. Inside lay a tiny mechanism, a music box. Maggie wound the small key, and the lullaby she'd been hearing filled the air, clear and sweet. It was the song her mother had sung to her as a child, the same one she'd hummed to their stillborn son as she held him that brief, precious time. Beneath the mechanism was a folded note. For Maggie, it read in Henry's handwriting: "I made this to remind you of the music that's always been in you, even when life got quiet. Remember how we used to dance? How we used to laugh? I miss that woman, the one who saw beauty everywhere, who wanted to paint the sky and swim in the ocean. I miss her smile. If I'm gone when you find this, please know that my greatest regret was watching that light dim in you year by year. Find it again, Max. For both of us. All my love, Henry." Maggie sank to her knees in the soft earth, the music box playing its gentle melody. Memories washed over her, not just of loss and regret, but of joy. Dancing in the kitchen while Henry made pancakes. Skinny dipping in the pond on hot summer nights. Laughing until her sides hurt at his terrible jokes. When had they stopped doing those things? When had living become merely existing? The Scarecrow stood above her, its fabric arms outstretched. In the moonlight, Maggie could almost see Henry's face and its burlap features, the kind eyes, the crooked smile. "I'm sorry," she whispered, though she wasn't sure if she was speaking to the Scarecrow, to Henry, or to herself. "I've been hiding here, haven't I? Using this place as an excuse not to live." The music box played on, its melody weaving through the corn stalks. Maggie closed her eyes, letting the sound wash over her. For the first time in years, she felt something stir within her, not just grief or longing, but possibility. She returned to the house as dawn broke, the music box clutched in her hand. Sleep eluded her. Instead, she pulled out Henry's journal and read every page, tracing his drawings with her fingertips. Then she found her old sketchbook in the attic and began to draw, hesitantly at first, then with growing confidence. The farmhouse. The cornfield. The scarecrow. Days passed. Maggie divided her time between necessary chores and rediscovering abandoned passions. She painted a landscape of the farm at sunset. She baked her mother's apple pie recipe and shared it with her nearest neighbor. She sorted through closets and drawers, setting aside things to donate. Each night, she wound the music box and listened to its lullaby. Each night, she felt a little more of herself returning, the self that had been buried beneath years of routine and regret. A week after finding the music box, Maggie woke before dawn with a decision made. She dressed carefully, putting on the blue dress Henry had always loved, and walked to the cornfield as the first light touched the horizon. The scarecrow waited, its patchwork body silhouetted against the pink-streaked sky. Maggie stood before it, the music box in her hands. "I've been thinking about what Henry wanted," she said. "About what I want. This farm has been my excuse for staying small, for not taking risks. I told myself I was honoring my family by keeping it going, but really, I was just afraid." The scarecrow's button eyes gleamed in the early light. "I'm going to sell the farm," Maggie continued. "Not all of it. I'll keep the house and a little land. But the rest. I'm going to use that money to live, Henry. To see those places we talked about. To paint them. To feel the ocean on my skin." As she spoke, a gentle breeze rustled through the corn. The scarecrow's head tilted slightly, as if in approval. "But first," Maggie said, "I need to say goodbye. To thank you for watching over me. For helping me find Henry's gifts." She reached up and straightened the scarecrow's hat, her fingers lingering on the faded fabric of Henry's old shirt. Then she wound the music box one last time and placed it on the ground at the scarecrow's feet. The lullaby rose into the morning air as Maggie took a step back. "I won't forget," she promised. "But I can't stay stuck anymore. Henry wouldn't want that. I don't want that." As the music played, Maggie turned and walked back toward the house. She didn't look back, didn't see the scarecrow's arm lift in farewell, didn't see the button eyes follow her retreating figure. The days that followed were filled with activity. Maggie contacted a real estate agent. She sorted through decades of accumulated possessions. She researched coastal towns where she might like to visit first. The lullaby no longer came at night. The scarecrow remained still, a silent guardian over the cornfield soon to belong to someone else. On the day before the first potential buyers were to visit, Maggie woke early. She made coffee and carried it outside, settling on the porch steps to watch the sunrise. The cornfield stretched before her, golden in the morning light. A thought struck her suddenly. She set down her mug and walked to the shed, emerging with seed packets and a trowel. Then she made her way to the scarecrow. The earth was soft around its wooden post. Maggie dug small holes in a circle, planting wildflower seeds, black-eyed Susans, coneflowers, daisies. Flowers that would return year after year, a living reminder of what had been and what could be. As she worked, she hummed a lullaby, her voice growing stronger with each note. When the planting was done, she stood and brushed the dirt from her hands. "Thank you," she said simply. That night, Maggie slept deeply for the first time in years. She dreamed of Henry, young and strong, dancing with her in the cornfield. "That's my girl," he said, his smile as bright as she remembered. "There you are. I've been waiting." When she woke, tears dampened her pillow, but they weren't tears of grief. Something had shifted inside her, a weight lifted. She dressed quickly and went to the window, looking out at the farm bathed in early light. The scarecrow stood in its place, but something was different. Maggie grabbed her sweater and hurried outside, drawn across the dewy grass to the edge of the field. Around the scarecrow's feet, impossibly, the wildflowers she'd planted just yesterday were blooming, a riot of color against the brown earth. Maggie reached out a trembling hand to touch a yellow petal, confirming it was real. The music box sat among the flowers, though she was certain she hadn't left it there. Maggie picked it up, turning it over in her hands. The mechanism inside was still, the key unwound. She placed it carefully on the fence post nearby. The morning breeze carried the scent of the flowers to her, sweet, alive, promising. In that moment, Maggie understood. The treasure Henry had left wasn't buried in the earth. It wasn't the music box or the mementos. It was the reminder that life continued, that beauty persisted, that it was never too late to begin again. She looked up at the scarecrow, at the faded flannel shirt that had once warmed Henry's back, at the hat he'd worn while working the fields. For an instant, she thought she saw it nod, a slight movement almost lost in the breeze. "I know," she said softly. "I know." Maggie turned toward the house, toward the future waiting to unfold. Behind her, the Scarecrow kept its vigil, but eyes watching over the blooming flowers and the music box that had played its purpose into being. The lullaby remained silent now, but Maggie carried its melody within her, a reminder of what had been lost and what had been found again. As she walked away, her steps were lighter, her back straighter. Ahead lay unknown paths, new horizons, the life that had been waiting all along. And in the cornfield soon to belong to others, wildflowers would bloom each year around a patchwork guardian, telling a story few would understand, but many would feel, a story of love that continued beyond absence, of dreams deferred but not forgotten, of the courage it takes to begin again.